Alex Laferriere gets paid, some surprising news for Quinton Byfield, and disappointing news for Darcy Kuemper. All that and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, also one of the co-hosts of the Puck Podcast, a weekly podcast that recaps the week in the NHL. Now in our 20th season of doing a show every week. It's one of the longest running hockey podcasts out there. New episode out now. And also, I am a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Well, coming up on today's show, we're going to talk about some LA Kings players being considered for the Olympics and one that apparently isn't being considered, and what Edmonton Oilers player could affect what a Kings player is going to get paid. But we start with the big news from over the weekend. The report came out on Friday, but the Kings made it official on Saturday, and that is the signing of forward Alex Laferriere to a contract extension. The 23-year-old restricted free agent gets a 3-year deal worth $12.3 million. He'll make $4.1 million per season and is now signed through the 2027-28 season. No surprise that this deal got done relatively quickly. GM Ken Holland had actually mentioned Laferriere by name a few times when talking about the young core of the team. So it was certainly expected that this is something that would get done and the Laferriere would be retained by the Kings. By the way, Laferriere will still be a restricted free agent when this contract expires. So he'll still be under team control, meaning his next contract will also more than likely be as an LA King. So that is a win for the team. His current deal is, or what the deal is that he just signed, is about exactly what I thought he would get. I had mentioned that he would get a bridge deal, probably 3 years and around $12 million, $4 million per season. Well, he got a little bit more than that. But I think it was a deal that was very expected. I think it's a deal that is very fair for both the player and the team. Laferriere gets a chance to, if he keeps progressing in the way that he has been very briefly so far, he can get a bigger deal in 3 years. And I certainly think he and everyone, the team, fans, should be very encouraged by the path that Alex Laferriere appears to be on. Now, his first year was a surprise. 81 games with the Kings. This was after just 4 games with the Ontario Reign in the AHL the season before, and that was after he turned pro after 2 years at Harvard. His first year with the Kings, 12 goals, 23 points, playing a bottom 6 role in his first season. Solid rookie numbers, especially in a season where no one expected he was even going to play for the Kings. And he plays in all but 1 game for the Kings that season. Now, last season, a step forward. Now, 77 games because of a few injuries, so he played a little bit less, but all of his numbers went up in all the categories. 19 more goals, or I should say 19 goals, 7 more than he had his rookie year. He had 23 assists, 12 more than his first season, and 42 points, 19 more than the year before. He also went from a minus 14 to a plus 22. And keep in mind, he increased all of his numbers playing 4 fewer games than he did the season before. Now, he did get some more ice time. He got about 3 more minutes of ice time per game than he did his rookie year. But again, very encouraging numbers after 2 years for Alex Laferriere. Now, last season certainly had its ups and downs. Started off amazingly, but he cooled off pretty quickly and then stayed kind of cool the rest of the season. Now, he had 11 goals and 20 points in his first 25 games. But after that, only 8 goals and 14 points in the remaining 52 games of his season. Now, he still ended up 6th on the team in goals, 7th in points, and again, took a nice jump from his previous year. Laferriere did have no goals, 3 assists in all 6 playoff games against the Oilers. So the question is, which Alex Laferriere that we saw last season is the real Alex Laferriere. I mean, after the first 2 months of the season, he was on pace for around 40 goals. And I don't think anyone thought he was going to get that. A little bit disappointed with the start that he had. I would say that he didn't at least get 30. But I would think if he continues to play a top 6 role over his career, I think he's a guy who will hit 30 goals fairly consistently. Again, top 6 role. I could see Alex Laferriere as his career goes along being a 25 to 30 goal scorer pretty consistently. Maybe he's a guy that every once in a while he'll touch the low 30s. Probably not going to be a guy that scores 35 or more per season. I don't think consistently. I do think where he is slotted now on the second line with Quinton Byfield and Kevin Fiala, it's a great opportunity for Alex Laferriere to be on a line that could certainly push for having the most minutes of any line on the team. Now, Byfield and Fiala are going to do a lot of the heavy lifting, and they're going to do a lot of the the spectacular things. But I think playing alongside 2 potentially elite forwards should only benefit Alex Laferriere. I do think that his style can complement those 2 players. I think he's got good enough size at 6'1", 205. He's not afraid or timid about going to the net. He really improved on that aspect of his game last season, which I think was very encouraging because that's what he needed to do. He's got good enough hands, and he can contribute certainly on deflections and tip-ins and feeds from Q and Fiala. And he's got enough skill that he can hold his own with either of them if he has to be, a part of any odd man rushes or anything like that. He can certainly contribute that way as well with a good pass or with a finish. Now, Fiala is not necessarily great at anything at this point, but I do think he is very solid to very good in most everything. I expect if he stays healthy, that he will once again eclipse his numbers from last season. I expect him to set new career highs in goals, assists, and points come next season. Now, I'll be interested to see how Laferriere maybe can improve his power play game. Now, he's probably going to be on the second power play unit. Now, maybe if Corey Perry is on that second power play unit, Perry is going to be around the net. He's going to be that net front presence. So maybe Laferriere is more on the wing, and maybe that gives him an opportunity to be a little bit more of a finisher, a little bit more of a sniper, to get his shot off a little bit more. So we'll see. That's one thing I am intrigued to see. Can he be more of a factor on the power play? As it stands right now, just 2 power play goals and only 7 power play points in 158 career games. So that is certainly one aspect of his game that I think he can improve on. But I do think he'll be better across the board when it comes to the major stats come next season, because another year of maturity, another year of experience, and playing on that line, I think certainly if he does all year long, will definitely benefit Alex Laferriere. Now, one thing I was pretty impressed with last season with Laferriere was how much he stayed in control during some tough times. He had some pretty bad luck and seemed like he was snake bit for most of the second half of the season, but it didn't really affect his overall game. I'm sure there had to be a level of frustration, especially with how his season started so well, and to see it not continue and to not get some breaks had to be hard, had to be tough on his confidence, but he still played hard every night. He still found other ways to contribute. He never let the slump or the bad luck ever really affect him too much as far as the rest of his game. He didn't take, frustration penalties or do anything like that. And I know it's kind of cliche to say a guy that went to Hartford has a level of intelligence, but I do think that does fit with Alex Laferriere. I think he's a smart player. I think he knows where to be on the ice most of the time. I think he knows what his limitations are, right? He knows what he can and can't do well. He never tries to do more than he should. And, players can get themselves into trouble when they try too hard. Trying hard, it's always great. But when you're doing things that you're not, that's not your strong suit, or forcing things because you want to badly make something happen, sometimes that's worse than the alternative. I know Kevin Fiala has done that on occasion. So I think Alex Laferriere really understands his role. I think he fits well with the Kings. And for a 3rd round pick in 2022, I think Laferriere is right on track, exactly where the Kings would have hoped he would be when they selected him 83rd overall. That draft class in 2020 has been pretty solid for the Kings. You had Byfield, Laferriere. Of course, Brock Faber was a part of that as well, now playing for the Minnesota Wild when they traded him for Kevin Fiala. And when you look at the draft class Laferriere is around top 20 in games played to this point. He's around top 20 in total points in that draft class, and he's the highest drafted player in games played and points so far in that category. Everyone else ahead of him in those two categories was either a first or a second round pick. So he is the only third round pick that is amongst the top 20 in games played and points scored at this point in his career from the 2020 draft class. And I think you could make a case that he is definitely the best third round pick of the 2020 draft class. And you can even make a case that he's one of the best value picks in the entire draft class. So Laferriere now signed. GM Ken Holland has taken care of the roster for next season. Everyone is under contract, so we are good to go with this roster. And according to puckpedia.com, the Kings still have $2.6 million left in cap space available to use if they need it. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk about a couple of LA Kings and the Olympics. That is next on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com and get 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right, you probably know, and maybe are even looking forward to, the NHL returning to participate in the Winter Olympics coming up in 2026 in Italy. That will put a big pause on the NHL season in February. So how many LA Kings will be taking part? We think we know two for sure. Adrian Kempe should be good to go for Team Sweden. Kevin Fiala for Team Switzerland, as long as they're both healthy. Those two guys are pretty much locks. Now, what about Kings veteran defenseman Drew Doughty? Well, Team Canada announced a list of 42 players being considered for their Olympic team and invited those players to attend an orientation camp. It's coming up August 26th through the 28th. Doughty has been invited to take part, and so has Kings forward Quinton Byfield in a little bit of a surprise. Now let's start with Doughty. If experience and enthusiasm or qualities Team Canada is looking to add, Doughty would be a shoo-in for the team. When it comes to playing for your country, a few NHL players are as into that as Drew Doughty. Now, of course, a lot of them want to do it, but Doughty, that's really something that's important for him. Now, he's represented Canada in two different Olympics already, Vancouver in 2010, Sochi in 2014. He won gold each time. Won gold in the Four Nations face-off this past season. Won gold at the World Cup of Hockey in Toronto in 2016. Gold at the World Juniors back in 2008. And a silver medal at the World Championships in 2009. However, this time around, if Drew Doughty makes the Team Canada roster, it will likely be similar to what happened last year for the Four Nations, where he was in consideration, wasn't on the final roster, but an injury opens up an opportunity, and he ends up making the team that way. I could see Drew being in that same kind of situation where he's right on the fringe, and maybe if somebody gets hurt, he's probably one of the first guys to go in. But I have no doubt and completely understand that Drew Doughty would love to be on the Canadian Olympic team. The question is, just like last season at the Four Nations, is that necessarily a good thing for the LA Kings? I think you can make the argument it wasn't something that benefited the Kings last season or Drew Doughty. I think you could make that argument again for the Olympics, should he be selected to play. Now, last season, even though Doughty seemed to be on schedule for his return date from the fractured ankle in the preseason, by Doughty's own admission, he was not 100% when he played for Canada in the Four Nations. He was not 100% when he played for the LA Kings down the stretch and into the playoffs. Now, could him sitting out the Four Nations this year and maybe even waiting for his return a few weeks before the end of the regular season and then being ready for the playoffs, could that have benefited him and the Kings as far as his playoff performance? I mean, I think it's easy to say yes, I mean, extra rest, extra recovery time, it makes sense that it would benefit him. It couldn't make it any worse, that's for sure. But would a healthier Drew Doughty have been the difference maker as far as the outcome of the first round series against the Oilers? I doubt that, to be honest with you. But I do think it's fair for people to say that maybe Drew Doughty was a bit selfish. He put himself ahead of the Kings in that situation. I think that's fair to say that he did. And at the end of the day, maybe he does come out the winner in this because he gets another gold medal. He gets another amazing experience and made some lifetime memories that no one can ever take away from him by participating in that event and winning a gold medal. And it was a great event for hockey. There's no doubt about that. So I guess it would be hard to say for him personally, it wasn't worth it. But you can argue that, maybe Drew has earned that right for what he's done, what all he's done for the Kings. But I also understand some fans saying like, hey man, the LA Kings are the ones who pay you to play, not Team Canada. So I get both sides of it. I think, like I said, that Four Nations event though was a great thing for hockey. The LA Kings are a part of that hockey culture. You could argue that it did help, that kind of from that aspect, I guess. But personally, in the end, I didn't really have that much of a problem with Drew kind of pushing it so he could play in the Four Nations. And maybe it wasn't the best thing in the end for him or the Kings. But like I said, I really don't think his health or not being at 100% or close to it was the difference in the Kings beating the Oilers or not. That said, what about the extra wear and tear on his body for this season by playing in the Olympics? Or maybe better said, how about Drew Doughty getting the extra rest, getting almost a month off if he doesn't play in the Olympics, and how that could benefit a player like him who's going to turn 36 in December down the stretch of the regular season and into the playoffs. He's going to be playing likely as many minutes as he always had this season, which I hope isn't the case. I hope we see his minutes reduced and some of the workload taken off of him. But if he makes the Olympic team, yeah, he probably isn't going to be a top pairing guy, but and yeah, he'll play less minutes than he normally would with the Kings, but he's going to play 3, maybe up to 5 games, assuming that Canada makes the medal round. Is that a big deal? Well, probably not. But again, I do think him not playing in the Olympics, that extra rest, those 3.5 weeks of rest, could really benefit a player like him. So Drew Doughty was a little bit selfish, wanting to push it and participate in the Four Nations. So I will be a little bit selfish as a Kings fan and say, I kind of hope Drew doesn't make the Olympic team because I would like to see him get that extra rest down the stretch for the LA Kings. Now, 13 defensemen have been invited to this Team Canada orientation camp, and there'll likely be 8 defensemen selected for the final roster. And while it may or may not benefit Drew Doughty to be on the Olympic team or, that possibility, I think the opposite is the case for Quinton Byfield. I think just to have Q invited to this orientation camp is nothing but positive. I was a little bit surprised he got invited, to be honest with you, but goes to show you what the powers that be in Team Canada think of Quinton Byfield's abilities and hopefully his trajectory for his career. 26 forwards have been invited, 14 forward spots likely on the final roster. And with guys like Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, and Nathan McKinnon at center, pretty much zero chance Quinton Byfield would play center for Team Canada if he were selected, which I think is a kind of a long shot, to be honest with you. But he has played wing at the NHL level. It's something he could certainly do. I think if he were to make this team, and again, injuries could be a part of the equation for Q as the season goes along, I think he's definitely going to be a candidate for a wing spot. I don't see him being a center with this Team Canada roster, but I think him just being in consideration for it, being invited to this orientation camp, I can only assume that would be a great thing for him, boost his confidence, and to be around these elite guys and feel like he's a part of that in some small way. I think that I don't see any downside to it. I don't see any downside to Quinton Byfield potentially being an Olympian for Team Canada. If he does make the team, of course, there's always the potential for injury, and that's a risk, unfortunately, that is out there for everybody. But I don't see a downside for Quinton Byfield. I wouldn't be heartbroken if Drew Doughty doesn't make the team. I would love to see Quinton Byfield make the Canadian Olympic team. There's also another player who should be on the Canadian Olympic team. We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. All right, so Kevin Fiala going to be there for Switzerland. Adrian Kempe going to be there for Sweden. We'll see about Drew Doughty and Quinton Byfield, but there is a player who should be on the Canadian Olympic team, and I don't understand why he isn't apparently on the radar. Now, again, things could change with an injury. You never know. But I'm going to give you some goalie numbers to consider. All right. Goalie A had 28 wins last year. Goalie B had 32 wins. Goalie C had 31 wins. And goalie D had 31 wins. So that's all pretty even. There's no disparity there for the most part. Goalie A had a 2.69 goals against average. Goalie B had a 2.47 goals against average. And goalie C had a 2.82 goals against average, while goalie D had a 2.02 goals against average. And as far as save percentage, goalie A was at 900, goalie B was at 906, goalie C was at 901, and goalie D had a 921 save percentage. Goalie A is Jordan Binnington of the St. Louis Blues, who has been picked by Team Canada to go to this orientation camp. Aiden Hill of the Vegas Golden Knights is goalie B. He's also been selected. Goalie C is Sam Montembeault of the Montreal Canadiens. And goalie D is Darcy Kuemper of the LA Kings. His goals against is far better. His save percentage is far better. And his wins are on par with any of those other goaltenders from last season. He's also the only goalie of the goalies that I've just named who can say, I've won a Stanley Cup and I've been a finalist for a Vezina Trophy, which was last year. None of those other guys can say that. Jordan Binnington has won a cup. So has Aiden Hill. They have not been finalists for a Vezina, and Sam Montembeault has done neither. So I don't understand at all why Darcy Kuemper is not one of the three goalies for Team Canada. I understand 2 years ago he lost his starting job in Washington. So what? What have you done for me lately? What have you done recently? I mean, shouldn't that be in consideration? And again, if it isn't, you can still say he's won a Stanley Cup and he's been a finalist for a Vezina. I really don't get this one. And if it's an age thing, because he would be the oldest of those goalies listed, who cares? We're not talking about him being the goalie 3 or 4 years from now. We're talking about him being it in February. So again, we'll see what happens. If there's an injury, maybe Darcy Kuemper is in consideration, but he should already be in consideration. He should already be one of the three goalies for Team Canada. Maybe there's something I'm missing. I don't know what it is. But I think it's absolutely ridiculous. Darcy Kuemper is not one of the three goalies for Team Canada. I hope, I don't wish injury on any of the other guys, but I hope somehow Darcy Kuemper can get the attention that he deserves. We obviously mentioned Alex Laferriere signed the roster set for next season with the Kings, but GM Ken Holland still has one more piece of important business to take care of, and that is, of course, signing star forward Adrian Kempe to a contract extension. Led the team in points and goals last year, or was tied for the goal lead. Led the team in points. He will be an unrestricted free agent after next season if he is not extended during the season. And the Kings they do not want to go into this season with him not signed. They don't want this to be his distraction. They don't want the possibility of their best player walking at the end of the season. This can't happen. Okay, it needs to get done either before the season starts or in the first month of the season. That has to get done. Now, I have mentioned in previous shows that nobody should be worried at this point about him not having been signed, because all these big time UFAs to be after next season, there's a big list of them and some big time names. None of those guys have signed yet. So there's still plenty of time. Everyone's kind of taking some time off here. I'm sure Ken Holland and Adrian Kempe's representatives have had talks. But I did mention, we're kind of waiting for some dominoes to fall before this starts getting going. And I've mentioned the 32 Thoughts podcast a few times. Elliot Friedman is a guy I really respect his opinions. And he was talking about this, and he went a little bit more specific into it and was very accurate with pointing out the fact that everyone is not only waiting for some dominoes to fall, but we're specifically waiting for one domino to fall, and that's Connor McDavid of the Edmonton Oilers. Like Adrian Kempe, he's going to be a UFA after this coming season. And the Oilers are going to sign him. It's just how much. And with the salary cap going up, there's going to be a new standard that is going to be set. He's going to be the highest paid player in the NHL. The question is, how much is he going to get? And how does that affect everyone else that's going to sign? It's they compared it on the 32 Thoughts podcast to a house. And I thought it was a very relatable way of putting it, right? It's about property values. It doesn't really matter what, the house down the block sold for 2 years ago. What is the house going to sell for now? And that sets the standard and the values, right, for the other houses around it. So with the salary cap going up and with Connor McDavid being who he is, we know he's going to get a big deal. He's going to be the highest paid player. Right now, Leon Draisaitl makes the most per season. That's $14 million. So McDavid is going to get 15 or more. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Right now, he's making 12.5. So exactly what that number is, all the other agents are kind of waiting to see, and how that slots down to the rest of the players, guys like Kirill Kaprizov, Cale Makar. There's a lot of guys, and Kempe is one of those guys. So we've heard he wants $10 million a year. I've said I think I would be more than happy to give him that. Some others have disagreed a little bit, but I think around 10 is reasonable. But again, they're all waiting to see what's McDavid going to sign for, how that's going to affect everyone else, and then the dominoes start to fall. And I think once that happens, once McDavid gets signed, or even maybe Kirill Kaprizov sets the market, and then we see other guys kind of slot in, including Adrian Kempe. So we're waiting for kind of the big time UFAs after the season to sign, and then I think we'll start seeing the wheels moving, and Adrian Kempe hopefully will be a part of that very, very soon. All right, for you everydayers, those of you that listen to watch Locked On LA Kings every day, coming up on our next show, we're going to have a special guest. He is the new head coach of the LA Kings AHL affiliate, the Ontario Reign. His name is Andrew Lord, and I think you're going to enjoy getting to meet him and hearing his story. That's going to be in our next show. Also, later this week, we are scheduled to be joined by former LA Kings assistant GM Mike Fuda, and be interested to get his thoughts on the job that Ken Holland is doing and where he sees the LA Kings as a guy who was a part of putting together 2 Stanley Cup winners in Los Angeles. Where does he see the Kings at this point as far as being a kind of a cup contender? Of course, at the end of the week, we'll have our feedback show as well. And if you want to get a comment in for the fan feedback show or a question, lockedoneddie@gmail.com is the email address, EDDIE. If you're watching on YouTube, we welcome your comments in the comment section, and we would love you to stay connected with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We are at Locked On LA Kings. And if you're looking for some exclusive Kings content while also supporting your host, shoot me an email at lakingsextra@gmail.com. We'll get you the information on that. We've got a live chat over there every week. Also some exclusive content as well. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you next time. And as always, go Kings, go.